Hey, I'm Baz and you're watching Venture Offroad Australia 4x4. Just recently we went to go on a camping trip in our 80 series Landcruiser. We were leaving in the dark, and not long after leaving the driveway pretty much, the dash lit up like a Christmas tree, the headlights went really dim, and realised the alternator had died. So back home we went. We missed out on our camping trip unfortunately, and now I'm replacing the alternator. My original plan was, this is the original alternator I'm holding here. My original plan was that I was going to attempt to replace the faulty components, just open it up and test them. It's not too difficult to do. Once I opened it up and started testing things, I realized that it was the rectifier holder or the diode pack that was the issue. To get a good quality replacement was going to cost me about $270, nearly $300 I think. And I didn't want to go down the cheap eBay route. I could have got a rectifier, brushes and the voltage regulator off eBay for $100, but I figured I'm probably going to end up, you know, with it failing somewhere out in the bush, which is not ideal. So I want to go with a reasonable, sort of a reputable product, not just an eBay special. So I started looking around at what replacement alternators would cost me, and obviously the genuine Toyota one was completely out of the question in terms of price. I think it was over $1,000. Terrain Tamer would be my next choice. They had one, I think it was about 600 or 650 thereabouts, something like that anyway, and that was pretty tempting to me. I came across online auto parts, and I have bought a couple of tools and bits and pieces from them before, and it's been just fine. So I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll have a look at their alternators. Ended up with the online auto parts. AutoNova is the brand of the alternator, and they claim to be to make OEM parts, so original equipment manufacturing. And they're an Australian, well, they claim to be an Australian company. So obviously, you know, the alternator itself is not going to be Australian. I'm pretty confident that it would be a Chinese build. It comes with a 5-year warranty, and it's actually 120 amp output, whereas the original one is only 80. So I thought, well, look, let's have a look at it. I started googling around, seeing what reviews I could find. The only reviews I could find were either on the AutoNova website or on Auto Parts Online. So obviously, you know, you take a little bit with a grain of salt, because they're only going to show you the good ones. And I couldn't find anything on YouTube or anywhere really with people reviewing it. So I thought, well, let's give it a crack, and I'll do a long-term review. Then that information will be out there for everybody else. Now, in terms of first appearances, it looks exactly the same, or near enough to the original Toyota one. They come with this plug, which I actually don't need, so I'll take that out. But that's your flat 3-pin plug, which is what's used on the later 80 series, whereas the round is what's used on the earlier 80 series. So that's kind of handy that you get that included, so you can just keep your original wiring. You don't have to modify your original wiring at all. I don't need that because I've got the flat plug. I did put the original Toyota pulley against that one, and it looks like there is a little bit of difference there, maybe only a couple of mil, but we'll just measure that and see. So I'd say the actual unit itself, maybe it does look a tiny bit bigger, I don't know, but let's have a look. So that pulley is 72 mil, the genuine is 76. So we've got 4 mil difference in the size of the pulley. So I don't know, I imagine that that's not going to make a difference. The other thing I just want to check is the spacing on the bolt hole. That's 150, about 3 mil, 4 mil difference in the bolt hole spacing from what I can tell. That mounting point is about 58 mils. The Toyota one's exactly the same, so that's a good thing. So we'll see how we go in fitting it up and test it out. Let you know how it goes. So the main battery is completely disconnected, both the positive and negative. I've just got some rags in there to isolate the terminals. So in terms of removal of the alternator, it is pretty straightforward. You've got a top and a bottom mounting point, so you disconnect the battery to the battery end first, then disconnect the positive battery post on the alternator, and the 3-pin in the back, which is what senses the voltage and whatnot, tells the alternator how much to put out on the positive post. And then it picks up its earth through the actual the mounting point onto the engine. There's a little bash plate underneath the car that helps to remove that and get access from underneath. Some people like to pull other bits out, airbox and whatnot, to get the alternator out. I didn't have to do that, so hopefully in terms of putting this back in, I won't have any issues, and I can just slot that straight back in there without having to remove anything else either. And I went out the top. I don't know if some people go out the bottom, but yeah, I went out the top. So let's see if we can slot that back in, eh? Time to be a contortionist. See if we can slide that down in there. Proving to be a little tight coming past that air conditioning line. Looks like it's in there. There we go, past that. Appears to be in about the right spot. Well, this has turned into an absolute debacle, a battle. So far, well, I haven't even finished the install yet, but I'm not happy with this AutoNova alternator. I thought it was going to be pretty right in terms of the sizing. It turns out that the bottom mount on the alternator is about 1.5 mm, maybe 2 mm longer than the genuine unit, and it doesn't fit into the mounting position. I can make it fit. In fact, I have made it fit, but in order to do that, I've had to take a file to that bottom mount on the alternator. I didn't want to alter the mount on the actual car. I figure I'm better off messing around with the alternator, but it should just be a straight swap-in fit. It's designed for this car, so it should fit. I shouldn't need to go modifying the mount on it. And then I got myself into a situation before I filed down that mount to make it a bit smaller, where, you know, I was just trying to sort of shimmy it in, wiggle it around a bit. I got it in, well, not all the way in, but it went in far enough that I couldn't get it back out again. So then I was having to tap it with a rubber mallet and wiggle it, and I reckon it took me a good half an hour just to get the thing back out again. So I wasn't all the way in and I couldn't get it out. So I wasn't a happy camper, can tell you that much. So now I've filed down that bottom mount and I've got that in. But then the next problem is the distance between that bottom and top mount was out by, well, the AutoNova alternator had about I think it was about 4 mm bigger gap between that lower and upper mount, and I thought that wasn't going to be an issue, that there would be enough play in that top bracket. And there is, I think, if I loosen the bracket right off. But if I loosen that bracket off, then I can get the belts back on, but then I can't actually get to the bolts to tighten up that top bracket again. So it's an absolute mess. It's driving me crazy and I'm not happy at all. I was planning on avoiding taking out the aircon compressor, but I think it's just going to have to come out. That's going to give me slightly better access, and hopefully then that'll allow me to hold the upper bracket in position and tighten it up in a way, or in a spot that'll allow me to get full adjustment into the alternator, and then I can get the belts on. If that doesn't work, I'm going to have to take a Dremel to the top mount and just make the sort of slit that the alternator sort of bolt slides through, just make that a little bit bigger so that I can get that full play in there. But yeah, I'm not happy. At this stage, I wouldn't replace your alternator with an AutoNova unit unless you were going into it fully aware that you were going to have to do some modifications, but I just don't see why that should be necessary. So I'm going to keep going and see if I can make this thing fit, come too far to turn back. I mean, before I even started modifying it, it was too sort of grubby and bumped around to even take back, so I'm stuck with it. See how we go. Hopefully it performs better in terms of its electrical output than it does in terms of its fitment. Let's see. So we're going to loosen off the tensioner pulley for the aircon. Aircon belt out of the way. It does look like I've got better access to those bolts now. The top mount 2 bolts are here, the adjuster bolt just here. In hindsight, removing that aircon compressor may have been worthwhile to do, but in saying that, if it had just fit like it should have, I don't think there should have been any need to. I don't know if you can see on camera there, but I should be able to push that alternator over a good another 10 mil. It does look like there's enough clearance there to do it. I just don't know that that top bracket is actually allowing that much movement. Maybe I can tap it across with a wooden handle. So the question is, can I get those belts on there? I think I can. 2 alternator belts are back on. Now I'm going to tighten up that top bracket. I might just get away without having to take the Dremel to it, which I'd be really happy with. As it stands, I can't get to that bottom mount with the alternator where it is, so I'm going to have to pull that adjuster back, and then that'll give me some more clearance. There we go. Ratcheting spanners. Great investment. If you don't have some, get yourself some. Makes life so much easier. This is starting finally to look like a win. At least I've got those 2 alternator belts on. My problem before was that I couldn't tighten up these upper mount bolts while the alternator belts were on. The 2 bolts for the upper mount, I don't know if you can just make them out, one's up here and that's the other one there. So I've got my alternator belts on, so I can just tighten everything up now and we should be onto a winner. You can check out deflection there as well. That belt tension looks good to me. Don't ask me what the spec is for the
alternator belts. You'll have to check that one, or maybe I'll chuck it on the screen. But I do know that reused belts don't need to be as tight as new belts. Alright, go down the bottom and tighten up that lower mount. Aircon compressor going back in. I do need to drill out that terminal that goes onto the alternator. I believe that the post on the AutoNova Alternator is 8mm and the original alternator had a 6mm post, so I think drilling out's going to be a much better option than cutting that off and crimping on a new terminal, because the new terminals are not going to be anywhere near as bulky and good quality as that. So I'm going to need the drill, and I'm going to cover that alternator so I don't get any metal shavings in there. Let's see if that fits on the post. It does. So I've got those bottom two bolts loosely in place, and then I've gone back and nipped up the top ones just to make sure that that's sitting nice and central. Terminal back on. And we tighten up the pulley. Here we go. Alright, battery terminals going back on. Negative post. No lights on the dash. It's a job done.
With the install now complete, I cannot honestly recommend the AutoNova Alternator from Online Auto Parts. A part that's designed to fit a specified vehicle shouldn't need to be modified to make it fit. At least the output looks good, so the question is, will it last and stand up to the punishment of four-wheel driving? I'll post updates to let you know how it goes. Give the video a like if you found it helpful, and leave a comment with your aftermarket parts experiences so we can all learn from it. Catch you next time.